The American Western was one of the marvelous gifts presented by movie makers to their earliest audiences. Edwin S. Porter's silent film, The Great Train Robbery, from 1903, is commonly recognized as the first of this genre of film. Westerns not only had their start during the silent movie era, but also totally flourished during this period. But by the late 1930s, the Western had fallen out of favor with moviegoers. The genre had become viewed as a cheaply produced, second-rate Saturday matinee B-film. The characters of these films had become all too commonplace, and their actions and reactions totally predictable and even stereotyped. During late 1938 and early 1939, several westerns were produced on larger than ordinary budgets, kind of helping to reinvent this group of film and ushering in its rebirth. Those included Union Pacific, Jesse James, Dodge City, and Stand Up and Fight. By far the most influential one, though, was John Ford's Stagecoach. It was the first Western in 13 years for the renowned director, and his first of the sound era. This monumental masterpiece not only announced a new beginning for Ford himself, but also for the Western as a whole. Stagecoach practically by itself raised the status of Westerns from the B level to A status. The key component to the success of the film lies in Ford's abandonment of those cliched, all too familiar Western characters. He set out to reverse his audience's expectations of the genre. Namely, he revealed that the heroes and the villains are not always who you think. He also focused on developing his characters with depth and social commentary. And this again was something that was lacking in the Western. Ford just went completely against the grain. He did it totally different than you expected. He doesn't waste action and violence in an attempt to satisfy those with short attention spans. Instead, he uses them both to help tell the story, during which we learn to know the characters and become vested in them. Now, John Ford's son, Patrick, had read a short story that appeared in the April 1937 issue of Collier's magazine. The title of the story was The Stage to Lordsburg. The author was Ernest Haycox. After reading it, he told his father that this might be a good story to make into a movie. The premise of the story is really quite simple. A group of 9 strangers travels by stagecoach to Lordsburg, located in the New Mexico territory. Along the way, a number of unexpected challenges arise, including an attack by Apaches. The journey reveals who rises to the occasion and who does not. Ford went on to purchase the film rights for the story for $2,500. With some assistance from Ford himself, a wonderful screenplay was written by Dudley Nichols. Once the screenplay was completed, Ford shopped the project around to several Hollywood studios, including all the biggies: 20th Century Fox, MGM, Paramount, Columbia, and Warner Brothers. He even approached his good friend Joe Kennedy, who was associated with RKO Radio Pictures. They all turned him down because each claimed that there was no interest in Westerns anymore. And the second reason they refused him was because Ford insisted on using a B-Western veteran named John Wayne in a key role in the film. Ford recalled that finally he got a call from producer Walter Wanger, who had one more picture to make under his United Artists contract. He thought that was a pretty good story, and he was thinking about Gary Cooper and Marlene Dietrich for the roles. Ford told him that he didn't think that he ought to go high on the salary picture for a film like this. He said that this is a film that you really need to make for peanuts. He then asked Ford who he had in mind for the film, and he told him that there was this boy he knew that used to be an assistant prop man and a bit player for him. He said that his name was Morrison, but he's been making 5-day westerns and calls himself John Wayne now. He asked Ford if he thought he was any good, and Ford replied, "Yeah, I think so, and we can get him for peanuts," with Wanger putting up $250,000. Ford would give top billing to Claire Trevor. In 1939, Claire Trevor was the film's biggest star and commanded the highest salary. The film also featured Thomas Mitchell, John Carradine, Andy Devine, Louise Platt, George Bancroft, Donald Meek, and Barton Churchill. Stagecoach was the first of 9 westerns that Ford shot using the Monument Valley as his scenic backdrop. He would describe Monument Valley as the most complete, beautiful, and peaceful place on earth. In 1939, no paved road ran through Monument Valley, and this is why it hadn't been used as a movie location before. Harry Golding, who ran a trading post there, heard that John Ford was planning a big-budget western. So he actually traveled to Hollywood carrying over 100 photographs of the valley with him. He even threatened to camp out on Ford's doorstep until the director saw him and saw the photographs. When Ford saw him, he was instantly sold on the location, and even more so when he realized that its remoteness would free him from interference from studio executives. The interior scenes of the Stagecoach were all shot on a soundstage. The exteriors for the opening town and closing town of Lordsburg were both shot at Republic Studios. The ending was originally planned for daytime, but was changed to the nighttime to conceal the fact that they were using the same town. The climactic chase scene with the Apaches chasing after and attacking the coach was shot over a 3-day period in the Mojave Desert's Lucerne dry lake bed. They used scores of local Indians to play the Apache warriors and the various Indian tribes in many of Ford's other westerns. More than 200 were hired just for the attack on the Stagecoach alone. For his commitment to providing them with much-needed work, the Navajos called Ford Tall Leader. When John Wayne was cast, he brought with him Yakima Canute, at that time the most famous and revered movie stuntman there was. The most convincing fight scenes performed in films since the mid-1930s were actually based on techniques that he and Wayne had developed together, working with each other in B-westerns. One scene required the Stagecoach full of passengers to be floated across a flowing river. Technicians actually considered this impossible to pull off. Ford considered removing this scene entirely from the script altogether, but Yakima Canute suggested tying hollowed-out logs to the coach, which would increase its buoyancy and thus offset the weight of the fully loaded coach. In addition, an underwater cable was used to help pull the coach through. His plan worked, and the scene was retained for the film. Ford was so impressed by his work and the way he problem-solved and safely navigated through this situation that he gave Yakima free rein in creating all the other stunts for the film. Director John Ford liked to bully actors on the set, and this movie was no exception. At one point, he told Andy Devine that he was a big tub of lard and he didn't know why he was using him in this picture at all. But kind of worst of all, though, was his treatment of John Wayne. Once filming began, Ford was merciless to Wayne, constantly undermining him. He called him a big oaf. He called him a dumb brute. He would go on to continually criticize his line delivery and even his manner of walking. At least part of this was his plan to make John Wayne start feeling some real emotions. At one point, Ford grabbed Wayne by the chin and shook him and asked him, "Why are you moving your mouth so much? Don't you know you don't act with your mouth in pictures? You act with your eyes." John Wayne endured this rough treatment, and he rose to the challenge, thereby reaching a new level as an actor. He had starred in 33 B-westerns in the last 9 years. After John Ford called, he never did a B picture again. Orson Welles was so captivated by the directing that during his preparation for the film Citizen Kane, he reportedly watched Stagecoach for over 40 times. He said that John Ford was his teacher, that he had his own style, but Stagecoach was his movie textbook. He wanted to learn how to make movies, and he used this classic film to do it. Over the past 80 years, Stagecoach has received every conceivable accolade that's imaginable, and it's been hailed as one of the most influential films ever made. But watched today, the film may not seem very original. And that's because it has prompted numerous movies and television series in which a diverse group of characters were thrown together by chance and then forced to face and survive an unexpected ordeal. I don't think we can thank John Ford enough for Stagecoach. He helped change the course of cinematography and gave us a glimpse of the John Wayne to come in one fell swoop. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.